What's going on, guys? This is David, and this is PNP. Now, before we get started to have that discussion on the rookie wide receivers in fantasy, make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel. I'm doing a lot, and so is Rashad, so we need your support. It's probably like 70-75% of the folks who watch these videos that don't subscribe, so just come on in and subscribe and join us so you can get all the updates and things of the sort. And we also have a sponsorship with Manscaped, so you can use the code PNP at manscaped.com and you get 20% off and free shipping. Once again, using the code PNP at manscaped.com. Now, let's have a quick discussion about rookie wide receivers. So the thing about rookie wide receivers is, just like any wide receiver, it's about the quarterback that they have throwing to them. And I think some of the wide receivers that got drafted, the quarterback, some have decent quarterbacks, some not so much. Some has a lead dog already, so to speak. And, you have to take those things into account. I think it's never realistic to get into the whole, oh, this wide receiver was taken in the first round. He has to be a wide receiver one. No. Everybody's not Megatron. Let's be clear. There are some talented wide receivers that was taken in the first round, but we have to kind of simmer down when it comes to whether or not it's a legitimate sell to go ahead and say that this guy's going to be a wide receiver one, because that's a tough sell. You have to start thinking about the targets and whether or not that individual is going to get the proper targets. Top 25, like the 25th best wide receiver in fantasy last year was Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel had 97 targets. All right. So you're talking about a guy that has to get to that 100 target mark pretty much. Somebody like a DeAndre Hopkins had over 160 targets. You're talking 10 targets a game. All right. So, like, you want your wide receiver to get between 8 to 12 targets a game. That's, 8 on the lower end. Once you get below 8, you're talking wide receiver 2. All right. So, with that in mind, let's get into these key rookie fantasy wide receivers. Now, what I basically did, because there was a lot of wide receivers that were drafted in this draft, I just grabbed the ones from the top 3 rounds. So these are the wide receivers that were drafted in the first 3 rounds. All right. Now we'll go through them. Just a quick. I'll just go ahead and say what I need to say. The bottom line is, I only see 3 guys that has a legit shot to becoming a top 25 quarterback, 25 wide receiver in fantasy this year. That's Ja'Marr Chase, that's Devonta Smith, and Rashad Bateman. Those are the only 3 that has the potential. Waddle has an outside shot. Everybody else, there's too many things that's got to fall into place for them to fall into the top 25. All right? There's too many other factors. Like somebody like an Amari Rodgers for the Packers. That's just for an example. Aaron Rodgers has to be there, and he's going to have to get up to the number 2 job to be behind Devontae Adams. So when you start thinking about those type of factors, like somebody like a Nico Collins ain't gonna have no quarterback. Anthony Schwartz is gonna be at best the 3rd option in Cleveland. They already got Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. Like Elijah Moore with the Jets is somewhat interesting, but Zach Wilson is a rookie quarterback. He's gonna lead to his tight ends in his running game. All right, so it's just Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney is interesting in New York. You got Daniel Jones as the quarterback though. Right, and even when you start thinking about the 3 wide receivers I mentioned that could potentially be a top 25 wide receiver, Ja'Marr Chase, he could end up being the number 1 wide receiver in Cincinnati, and that might be the end goal. But Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins might have something to say about that. So when you start taking into account that now you have an additional wide receiver to feed, I mean, if you don't think the Bengals are going to be good and you're going to have Joe Burrow out here throwing it 40 to 50 times a game, then maybe there'll be enough for everybody, right? So that's one thing to take into account. Somebody like a Devonta Smith, he has a legitimate opportunity to be the number 1 wide receiver in Philadelphia. But then you got to ask yourself the question of, is Jalen Hurts the guy? Do you see him throwing the ball 35 times a game for him to get the target presence that he needs to succeed there? Rashad Bateman is pretty interesting, but they still got Marquise Brown there in Baltimore, but he could end up being the 2. And if Lamar Jackson becomes more of a pocket passer, since typically quarterbacks, they tend to become more pocket passer the older they get, especially when you're a running quarterback. If he starts throwing the ball more, there might be enough for Bateman to eat. But even at that, he's probably the 3rd option with Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown. So, like, a lot of these rookie wide receivers, at best, they're the third option. The only ones that probably will be higher than the third options would be Devonta Smith, Jamar Chase, but he's going to have to fight for it. Probably Waddle and Bateman. That's it. Like, everybody else is going to be a shot in the dark. Rondale Moore with the Cardinals. You still got DeAndre Hopkins is going to get the bulk of them targets there, right? Rondale Moore, outside shot, maybe could win the 2. Fitzgerald's still in the league. I mean, but you never know. So, I mean, and there's other wide receivers that the Cardinals have. I mean, some people were so hyped up with Andy Isabella. So, I mean, but my point still stands. Like, when you start thinking about these rookie wide receivers, you shouldn't be drafting hardly any of these guys. And the ones that you would draft would be Chase, Waddle, Smith, Bateman. Those are the only ones. I know folks like Tony. I get it. Right on. I'm not ready to convince myself because even when you consider the fact, all right, Daniel Jones is the quarterback, right? You got Saquon Barkley returning. So he's probably going to get some catches out of the backfield. He's going to run the ball a lot. You just signed Kenny Golladay. He's your one. There's no question about that. Evan Ingram is still on that team. All right? Pretty solid tight end. So when you take all those things into account, this is what you're going to get. So, you know, Dwayne Eskridge with the Seahawks, I mean, come on, man. Like, you're not going to get it. Terrace Marshall Jr. with Carolina. I think over time he could potentially be the 2, just not this year. They still have DJ Moore. They still have Robbie Anderson. Christian McCaffrey's coming back. At best, he's the 4th guy that they will look at. At best. That's best case scenario. 4th option. In an offense that might be running the ball more this year. So, Josh Palmer, Keenan Allen still plays for LA. So, like, I'm here to kind of, to simmer it down a bit. Like, when you talk about somebody that could be your wide receiver 2, Chase has a shot, Smith has a shot, Waddle has a shot. None of these guys are wide receiver 1s. Most of them are teetering between low-end wide receiver 2 and flex, to be honest with you. And for those who know how I roll in fantasy, I typically prefer my flex to be a running back position, even in PPR leagues. So that's pretty much all I have for the wide receivers in fantasy, man. Like, the bottom line is you're not going to really draft too many of them. You shouldn't be drafting too many of them unless you really like just want to take a flyer on a guy super late. The big 4 for this year is Waddle, Smith, Bateman, and Chase. Those are your big 4. All right. With that in mind, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Follow the podcast at Panther Nation PC. Follow me on Twitter at ChampD1012. Become a Patreon at patreon.com/Panther Nation PC. We're doing some really cool stuff. The MVP giveaway this week is going to be crazy. There's still time to get in. So if you want to be part of the Patreon and be an MVP, you might have the potential to get a really great prize. All right. And with that in mind, I'm out, man. Always remember.